Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
Natalie and Michael Cochran lived a life of enviable extravagance in a coal mining community in West Virginia's Appalachian Mountains. They owned multiple homes and drove a 1965 Shelby Cobra, among other nice cars. They jetted off to destinations like Hawaii and Paris, Disney World. They were shopping for a boat and a helicopter. They were also generous with their wealth, too. They gave scholarships for young people to go to college, for instance. How did they pay for all of these nice things? Michael had initially worked in IT, and Natalie previously worked as a pharmacist, although she quit to stay home with the kids. Together, the Cochrans launched startup businesses. To the outside world, they appeared to be successful small business owners. They won lucrative contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense and other federal agencies, selling weapons and technology to the government. But the Cochrans' perfect life was just an illusion, one that wouldn't last very long. According to federal prosecutors, Natalie Cochran was running a scam, a Ponzi scheme, from 2017 to 2019. And just as things were about to unravel, they said, Michael Cochran ended up dead. According to prosecutors, it was no coincidence, and Natalie went on trial for her husband's murder in January 2025. The murder weapon? It was a more unusual method of killing, according to the prosecution. The state said she injected Michael with insulin, sending his blood sugar level crashing to dangerously low levels. But in order to get a conviction, the prosecution would have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, even though there was little physical evidence. Nobody ever saw Natalie inject her husband, who wasn't diabetic. And according to the initial autopsy, which wasn't done until months after his death, there was no conclusive cause or manner of death. However, the prosecution told the jury there was compelling circumstantial evidence and a clear motive proving that Natalie had killed him.
This was a healthy man until she did him in. Now that answers the how. Why? Why would this happen? And why would it happen when it happened? Well, as the defense counsel informed you during questioning, the defendant had run a Ponzi scheme, a big one, where millions of dollars were taken from friends, relatives, local professionals. As many deceptions and lies as were told to her victims of the Ponzi scheme, Michael Cochran was told just as many. He did not know what was going on, but he was determined to find out, because people were saying, hey, we invested in your company in this plan, and we're not getting our money back. And he was frustrated. He was very frustrated. By the way, in case you've forgotten from some of your questioning, this defendant is a pharmacist. She knows about medications and drugs. Beyond that, she held herself out as a specialist in diabetic counseling. She knew the impact insulin would make.
But according to the defense, that was nonsense. Natalie was many things, they said. But a killer? No.
By the prosecution's account, and perhaps by some other accounts, Natalie Cochran is not a nice person. She defrauded friends, relatives, investors. She was involved in a Ponzi scheme. She cheated, she scammed. And she has paid for it. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the fact that she is perhaps a fraud and perhaps a cheat, and that you wouldn't perhaps want to invite her home for Sunday dinner, that you wouldn't like her, does not translate into being a murderer.
The prosecution and the defense were going to go head to head in a trial that centered around deceit and money.
The state says she is a fraud, therefore she is a murderer. She is a cold-blooded murderer because she is a cheat. That's what the state is telling you. But the state cannot prove, certainly not beyond any reasonable doubt, the what caused Michael's death, the how did that happen, and why it happened.
Who would the jury believe? This is Jillian in partnership with Law and Crime. You are listening to Court Junkie, episode 293. In the last days of his life, 38-year-old Michael Cochran fell seriously ill, while his wife Natalie seemed to ignore the gravity of his condition, according to their friends, who testified at Natalie's trial. Stephanie Hamilton, who worked as a physician's assistant, befriended the Cochrans through the football sports league their sons played in. Michael was the coach. On February 6, 2019, Stephanie's husband went over to the Cochrans' house because Natalie needed help. Stephanie's husband reported back and called Stephanie, sounding worried.
He called me and told me that Mike was sick and that he needed me to stop by the house. And I said, for what? And he said, because I cannot get her to take him to the hospital. And I'm hoping that if you come here, that you can convince her to take him to the hospital.
Stephanie went over to the Cochrans. Michael appeared to be asleep on the couch. He wore a blood pressure cuff on his arm. All of his vitals seemed normal to Stephanie. Natalie said Michael had been throwing up and had a seizure in the kitchen and then fell on the floor.
I had went to a meeting, and when I come out of the meeting, I texted her to check on things because when I left there, she said she was going to let him sleep it off.
Did you ever advise her not to have him checked by you?
Never.
What did you specifically advise her?
That he needed to be checked. She told me that he had a history of seizures, and he had stopped taking his medication. And I said, he has to be checked. I said, even people with the history of seizures, anytime they have one, they need to be checked. We never know which one's damaging. And she said she was going to let him check it off. I kept offering, I would go with her. We would go, we could bypass Raleigh General if that's not what they were wanting to do. We could go to Charleston. She said he wasn't happy at Charleston either. I mentioned Princeton. Nothing was good enough. I said, well, let's call Chris and see if he'll get, the airplane. I'm sure he'll fly him somewhere.
Chris, we're talking about
Chris Davis.
Did she accept any of those suggestions?
No, she said she was going to let him sleep it off.
So if you were quoted as the one that said, I'm going to let him sleep, I think you should let him sleep it off, you didn't say that.
Never.
That came from her, not
yes.
you. After you left, and other than text messages just to check on people, were you ever made aware that the defendant's sister was at him on that?
Yes. She told me in text message her sister was there and they had changed his clothes.
Did you find out why it was necessary to change Michael's clothes?
She said they cleaned the urine off, so I assumed he had lost muscle control and wet himself.
What was the significance to that to you as a physician's assistant?
That he had lost muscle control. So he needed to be in the hospital.
If insulin was the murder weapon, the prosecution presented a witness on the first day of trial who could explain how the drug ended up in Natalie's hands. Jennifer Davis was a stay-at-home mom who was Natalie's neighbor and good friend.
And then when my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2012, we became very close.
And why did you become close at that point?
She was a certified diabetic educator. And when he was released from the hospital in December, we went to the pharmacy to pick up his medicine, and she was working. And she took us in her office, and because it was devastating, we didn't know anything about diabetes, didn't know anything about his medicine, how to dose him. And she took us in his office, showed us how to give him shots, told us things like that.
So she provided diabetic counseling for your son?
Yes. And then for the longest time, I'm not sure how long, anytime he would eat, I would, if the carbs weren't counted, because in order to give him insulin, you'd have to count all the carbs. And if they weren't counted, on the back of a box or something, if we were just eating a plate of food, I would take a picture and text it to her. And she was very good. She knew exactly how many carbs that there was in that meal and how much, dosage to give him.
Adding to the various lies Natalie allegedly told, it came out in testimony that she had also told her friends that she had cancer in January 2019. Her doctor testified that he had not diagnosed her with cancer. Back to February 6, 2019.
She said that her and Mike, they were both sick, and I think they had the flu or the norovirus is what we were told either before or after. And she had to start taking small insulin shots. I'm going to have to order a vial. I know she said that the flu and the norovirus had hit her hard and made her more sick because of the cancer that she had. So then I had asked her if she was going to the cancer center or Dr. Halsey. And then I volunteered a vial of insulin if she needed it.
So, Jennifer, at this point, you were offering to help out a friend in need. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And I'm going to remove that sheet. Jennifer, just looking over this one, did she accept your offer of help?
Yes, she did. She asked if she could borrow a vial of insulin.
Did you provide that insulin to her?
I didn't personally. I was running late. I was going to the church's mission center that day, and I had put together a few drinks, and I put the insulin in a bag and gave it to my husband, and he dropped it off on the porch on the way to work.
And then came another text from Natalie.
Jennifer, can you tell me who that's a picture of?
Mike.
That's Mike. And Natalie sent you that photograph?
Yes.
Did she provide any context for that? Did she call you or anything? Or is this, you just received this out of the blue?
Just that.
What did this picture mean to you when you received it?
I mean, Judge, I'm going to object to this form of question. What do you mean to her?
I think it's fair. I'm going to overrule the objection. The witness can answer.
Just that it was just shocking that he was laying there.
Natalie texted Jennifer a photo of Michael laying on the kitchen floor. By then, Jennifer's husband had already dropped off their child's insulin to share with Natalie. And by then, Michael Cochran's blood sugar had dropped dangerously low. He threw up in the sink and then collapsed. That evening, Jennifer's husband took Michael to the hospital. He was put on a ventilator. Jennifer testified that Natalie didn't seem like a grieving, anxious wife while her husband was in such a dire condition. "I hope the swelling affects the mean side of his brain and the rest stays good," Natalie texted her. And Jennifer noticed Natalie remained focused on organizing a bingo fundraiser for a youth sports league.
Did you get to go up and visit Michael at any point while he was at CAMC?
Yes, we went every day.
And did you see him awake at any point while you were there?
No, he was never awake.
What was Ms. Cochran's demeanor like while you were there?
Going to object to that.
Overruled.
She was very calm. She was just in control. I felt that she was strong. She was, I guess normal as you can be.
What sort of condition was Michael in when you saw him?
He was intubated. He was non-responsive. He just laid there.
And then shortly after that, he was moved to hospice. Is that right?
Correct.
Did you ever get to see him while he was there?
Yes.
Like many people in Natalie and Michael's social circle, Jennifer Davis and her husband lost money in Nicole's Ponzi scheme. Jennifer's husband and his business partners gave more than $500,000. He had testified against Natalie at her federal trial for her financial crimes.
Did you speak with Natalie a lot while you all were visiting Mike at hospice?
Yes, we did. We spoke often.
And did you offer to help her at any point?
Yes. I tried, I was trying to be there for her and just comfort her. Like I said, I felt that she was been strong. But, I had even asked her at one point if there was anything that I could do to help her, anything I could get for her. And she had made a very just an odd comment. She said, if you could help me hold a pillow over his face, because I don't like seeing him this way.
What is a Ponzi scheme?
So when we say a Ponzi scheme, we're talking about a type of fraud. And what a Ponzi scheme is, the term Ponzi is a name coined after a con man in the 1920s. So Ponzi itself means nothing, but the Ponzi scheme is a methodology of fraud. And it's an illegal business practice where someone would induce a person or a victim to invest money into a business, and then they would continue to get investors to invest money in the business, but later investors' money would be paid to earlier investors' money, and then that cycle would just continue over and over. So as new investors would invest in the business, then monies from that investor would be used to pay earlier investors. Now, the investment could be a number of things, but that basically is what a Ponzi scheme is, taking new investor money and paying earlier investors on money that they were supposed to receive from their earlier investment.
That's former West Virginia State Police Trooper Robert Heinzman explaining a Ponzi scheme to the jury at Natalie's trial. State police received a complaint that Natalie was embezzling money from a local baseball league. That would eventually lead Trooper Heinzman to probe deeper and investigate her financial crimes with her two businesses. The scheme began in 2017 and got bigger as more investors gave her money. Natalie wasn't conning strangers or Wall Street investors. She was conning her loved ones. She promised her mother-in-law, Donna Sparks, that she could help make her wealthy so she wouldn't ever have to worry about money again in her golden years. And Donna believed her. What a blessing, Donna had thought, when Natalie presented her with this investment opportunity of a lifetime. Natalie had always needed extra capital until the feds paid for the government contract. So Donna emptied her life savings. We trusted Natalie because we loved her. She was our beloved daughter-in-law. She was married to our son Michael for almost 19 years. We never ever questioned or doubted Natalie because she was family and because she was so convincing, Donna said, according to court transcripts. Donna, a retired nurse, and her husband, who is Michael's stepfather, were from modest backgrounds and had worked hard for decades, saving up their money. They gave Natalie nearly $250,000. Natalie promised to not only pay Donna back, but to give her some of the profits from the government work. And the more than $1 million payment was coming soon, or at least that's what Natalie said. Natalie forwarded Donna emails from the federal government to verify the business deals and to assure her that the pending payments were on its way. After Michael's death, Natalie faced charges from her Ponzi scheme first. In federal court, she was convicted of wire fraud and money laundering and was sentenced to serve 11 years in prison in 2021. So she was already behind bars when her murder trial began in 2025. But the real question, did Michael know his wife was operating a Ponzi scheme?
The defense has floated the theory that Michael Cochran was up to his eyeballs in this Ponzi scheme. From your investigation, do you have any evidence that would support that?
Let me state by saying the business itself, in its appearance, in its existence, was legitimate. The business was legitimately set up. It was registered with the state of West Virginia. It was registered with the federal government. So Michael Cochran was aware of the business, and because he participated with what he believed was a legitimate business.
I'm going to object, Judge, as to what Mr. Cochran may have believed. That's cause for speculation.
You can continue, please.
So during our investigation, we reviewed many financial records, many documents to determine if any government contracts existed, any federal government contracts had been awarded to this business, and we could not find any contracts whatsoever where the government had awarded these. Now, there was one state of West Virginia contract that was that Mr. Cochran had, or the business had bid on, but they never fulfilled that contract. So beyond this one contract, there were never any contracts that we could find to support what the business purported to do. Also, in reviewing these documents, there were applications made to financial institutions, and many of those documents only bore the name of Mrs. Cochran in the business, and those documents would purport that she was a 100% owner of the business. So there was a suggestion or an indication that Mr. Cochran didn't know about certain documents that because he wasn't listed on certain documents. In addition to that, the victim investors of this financial crime were given reasons. They were given information to induce their investment. They were given information regarding them getting their investment money returned to them, the money they should have earned on their investment. So the information that was false or deceptive that was being given to victim investors of the business was the exact same information that was being given to Mr. Cochran when he would question why the business hadn't received its money from the contracts. He did participate in looking for contracts for the business to bid on, but that was about the extent of his involvement. He would search the internet and the federal websites to identify federal contracts that the business could bid on. But the structure was that Mrs. Cochran would go out and secure those contracts from the government. So as far as Mr. Cochran knew, based on the records that we reviewed, the interviews that we did, he believed that they had obtained contracts and that they would be receiving money for these contracts. So he would ask the same questions that investors would ask: where's the money for this contract? And so that would indicate that he was not involved, because he's asking the same questions regarding monies and profits.
Trooper Heinzman testified that they were able to retrieve text messages that proved Michael had been asking those questions. Court records and trial testimony gave insight into Natalie and Michael's marriage. They were high school sweethearts. Michael went off to college to play baseball, and his mom bought him a trailer. He surprised his mom when Natalie was living there and said she was his fiancée. They got married young. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Michael coached sports and was athletic. Michael's profession was in IT. Meanwhile, Natalie worked as a pharmacist, making $120,000 a year. They had left their jobs, and from 2017 to 2019, the Ponzi scheme was in full swing. The couple's lifestyle abruptly became very extravagant very quickly. Natalie used their investors' money to purchase 2 houses. She bought a 1965 Shelby Cobra, an expensive antique car. Michael bought $14,000 earrings for Natalie. Parked in the couple's driveway were 2 new motorcycles. The defense argued Michael should have known where all of these purchases were coming from. Natalie claimed Tactical Solutions, the first of their 2 companies, made a gross profit of $12.4 million from being a weapons contractor with the federal government on her 2018 tax return. The second business in this scheme was Business Technology Management Solution, which installed wiring, phone lines, computer lines, and did networking, IT work that fit with Michael's background.
Wouldn't it be surprising to you, Mr. Heinzman, that all that lavish lifestyle was sudden and enormous? And any reasonable person, such as Mr. Cochran, would ask where the money came from. Wouldn't that be the case?
That's a mischaracterization of our investigation. And I don't know what your question.
Then the answer is no.
Would I be surprised?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Well, no. Well, would you be surprised? Your wife walked in with a new real estate that she just purchased for X thousands of dollars. Wouldn't you want to question where she got that property? Unless you knew what the source of that income was. Would that be right?
I don't know.
Don't know. Well, all of a sudden, Mr. Cochran can afford a 1965 Shelby Cobra replica, an antique car, thousands of dollars. He drives in front of the house and says, "Honey, I just got me a nice little car." Wouldn't that be a question mark for anybody in the family where that money came from?
I don't know. I know where it came from.
Well,
I don't know what people in the family believe.
So he has all that money at his disposal, and he doesn't know where that money comes from, having no identifiable job?
He believed it came from a business called TSG that they ran together, getting federal contracts.
Right. And you believe that? That's your opinion?
The evidence points in that direction.
The evidence? All right.
Natalie's attorney questioned Trooper Heinzman about the $12 million profit listed on the tax returns.
Mr. Heinzman, the wife comes home and the husband comes home and says, "Honey, we just filed the taxes. Our income is $12 million. And then what?
That's not how the documents ran with this business or with the Cochrans, so that would not be the case.
For the profit of the TSM, $12 million. Where did that come from, sir? And even better, the wife says to, the husband says to the wife, "Honey, where did that 12 mil come from?" And you still testify here today under oath that he didn't know anything about the illicit Ponzi scheme? Is that your testimony here today?
Yes. He did not know anything about the Ponzi scheme.
Trooper Heinzman testified that Michael was aware that their family and friends, including their parents and siblings, had invested in their companies.
Natalie Cochran has a sister named Wendy, and her husband, John Poteet. They own a business here in Raleigh County.
How much did they invest?
Over $490,000.
And Michael Cochran was aware of that, wasn't he?
Did we continue with the list?
No, I just asked you a question, whether Michael Cochran was aware of that investment of almost $500,000.
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Well, which is it?
Well,
did he know?
He was aware of some. He was not aware of others. And then he was not aware of the extent of some of the investments or the repeat investments.
Well, how would you know that? This is the money sent to his account, isn't it?
Well,
isn't it?
I know that from my investigation, from reviewing financial documents, text messages, and interviewing
what
witnesses.
Investigation? Tell us specifically what you investigated.
It was the investigation that I was previously trying to explain that you objected to and we never got to. And now we're talking about fragments of that investigation here on cross.
As you sit here, Mr. Heinzman, you have to admit that Mr. Cochran was fully aware of large chunks of money that was being shipped to his company that he was a partner in. Wasn't he?
Mr. Cochran was aware of large sums of money coming to his business.
How much money was there total that was invested in TSG?
The victim...
not the victim. How much money was
the
invested?
total victim amount that was addressed in the federal charges was over $2 million. Over
$2 million. Mm-hmm. And you're telling this court... And what happened with that money, by the way, once it was invested? They lived high on a hog, didn't they?
Yeah, that was part of it, yes.
Right. And so Mr. Cochran gets a nice shot of over $2 million, and all of a sudden he takes everybody to France. He goes on a trip to Hawaii, takes the family, buys himself a nice vehicle. Oh, for that matter, he even wants to buy a hangar for his helicopter, right?
That's correct.
Trooper Heinzman was asked what happened to the money Michael's mom and stepdad invested.
And I don't know if they ever got anything back, but their money was used to pay other investors.
Right. So their beloved son did not even pay his own mother? On her investment?
Michael Cochran was not aware that his mom was not getting paid. He was not aware of the other investors. He discovered in August of 2018.
You're speculating. You're making this stuff up as you go along.
Dr. Diane Krieger, an expert in diabetes, was a physician and worked as the head of endocrinology at the Florida International University's College of Medicine. Based in Florida, Dr. Krieger testified remotely for the state. She said when Michael was admitted into the hospital on February 6, 2019, his glucose level was 21, a profoundly low blood sugar. To compare, somebody with low blood sugar, otherwise known as hypoglycemia, could have less than 55 milligrams per deciliter. So if Michael was at 21, he was off the charts. Dr. Krieger called it one of the lowest she had ever seen, and a big call for attention that raised lots of serious medical questions. Raleigh General Hospital, however, missed the red flags. The ball got dropped. Doctors hadn't performed specialized tests to determine if his low blood sugar was related to insulin and where the insulin had come from. These special tests needed to be done right when he had arrived at the emergency room, before any treatment began. But in this case, those tests were never performed, which, at trial, meant important evidence was not available for the jury to hear. It's unfortunate because it really helps make a determination about the cause of the low blood sugar, Dr. Krieger testified. What happens when a healthy person who doesn't have diabetes takes insulin? Dr. Krieger testified that it makes your blood sugar drop since your pancreas already naturally makes insulin. To get Michael's glucose numbers to 21, Dr. Krieger testified it would likely have taken a fair amount of insulin to have that effect, although it's hard to know for sure. There's limited medical data and study, for obvious ethical reasons, she said, done on non-diabetic people getting large doses of insulin. Several months after Michael's death, Dr. Peter Kubitschek, the chief medical examiner in Charleston, West Virginia, conducted an autopsy in this case. Why so long after Michael's death? His death was originally considered to be from natural causes. He had gone into hospice after leaving the hospital, and hospice didn't immediately report the death, according to Dr. Kubitschek. When law enforcement got involved and authorities became increasingly suspicious, that's when Dr. Kubitschek began looking at Michael's body, which was decomposed. The toxicology report found no drugs and no heavy metals. Unfortunately, Dr. Kubitschek could not determine the cause or manner of death. They were marked as undetermined. It was also impossible to tell if Michael had been injected anywhere or had any insulin in his system because so much time had passed and his body was moderately decomposed. Since the first autopsy results wouldn't help prove the prosecution's case that Natalie had murdered her husband with insulin, another state expert witness laid the groundwork. Dr. Paul Shane Uribe. Dr. Uribe conducted a second autopsy on Michael's body after it was exhumed 5 years after Michael's death.
And what did you determine were Michael Cochran's cause and manner of death?
Michael Cochran's cause and manner of death there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in this case that does not correlate with the autopsy findings or medical record. And whenever we have that, I call it a discordance or, things that don't add up or make sense. Those are, sort of the red flags that we look at. With the, entirety of the circumstances, including the initial autopsy findings, the second autopsy findings, which, there weren't much, the history of profound hypoglycemia that's very much unexplained. I came to the conclusion that the cause of death was exogenous insulin administration. And there's no explanation for why a non-diabetic, otherwise relatively healthy male would have such profound hypoglycemia and also refractory hypoglycemia as well. And there's no other viable explanation for it. That the only reasonable conclusion that I could make is that he was given insulin.
And so specifically, what is his manner of death?
Manner of death would be homicide, because there's no evidence that he administered insulin himself. People don't accidentally administer insulin to themselves or am given.
We object at this time. The statement that it is a homicide, that's for this court to decide. It is a conclusion that this witness cannot come to.
Your Honor, that is a manner of death which is determined by all medical examiners.
The objection's overruled.
Dr. Uribe is a forensic pathologist who's currently the deputy chief medical examiner at the Fort Bend County Medical Examiner's Office in Rosenberg, Texas, outside of Houston. He also spent 23 years as a medical examiner and forensic pathologist with the Army.
There are very, very few causes that would cause an otherwise healthy 38-year-old male to have a blood glucose of 21 that's confirmed by the lab. And especially with the associated hypokalemia, which is the low potassium as well. When you have profound hypoglycemia and hypokalemia, so low blood sugar and low potassium, with no other reasonable or viable explanation, I came to the conclusion that this is likely due to This is likely due to insulin that was administered at some point.
Here are some of the exchanges between the defense and Dr. Uribe during cross.
And were you hired by the Raleigh County Prosecutor's Office to testify in this case?
I was hired by the Raleigh County Prosecutor's Office to look at this case, at the time, possibly perform a second autopsy, which we ended up doing, and then subsequently for my testimony in this case, yes.
So the state and the Raleigh County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is paying you for your services, isn't that correct?
They're compensating me for my time, yes.
Was there any finding during your autopsy that detected any insulin in Michael Cochran's body or any C peptides?
No.
And this could not be determined because of the advanced decomposition of the body. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. And there's also no...
Thank you. You answered the question. Can you say with absolute medical certainty that exogenous insulin administration was the cause of Michael Cochran's hypoglycemia and death?
I can say
absolute certainty, 100%.
I don't use the term absolute for anything.
Was there any testing in the medical records from any of the hospitals that showed insulin and C-peptide levels?
No.
It's reported that Michael Cochran used medications he ordered from abroad. He used various substances. And you can't exclude those substances or medications as having caused his hypoglycemia because you don't know what they were. Wouldn't that be a correct statement?
The medication...
They're not listed anywhere, so you can't include or exclude them, correct?
The medications that I am aware that he was taking are not associated with hypoglycemia.
I'm talking about ones that weren't included. No accurate reportings of what those were. You can't exclude them because you don't know what they were, right?
Sure.
The prosecution called its final witness, Timothy Bledsoe, a now retired West Virginia State Police lieutenant. Lieutenant Bledsoe had been investigating Natalie for financial crimes when the probe began to evolve into a murder investigation. He was asked about text messages of interest that he discovered between Natalie and her uncle, Charles Hawley, who was listed in her contacts as Uncle Buster from September 2018.
What about these text messages stands out to you?
The first text message is from the defendant to Uncle Buster. It says, "Good evening. After all your contracts pay out, I won't be able to invest them anymore. I will cut your checks as soon as they come in. I am very sorry I wasn't transparent with Michael on all the contracts we had in the works."
Lieutenant Bledsoe, why does that text message stand out to you?
Because the defendant is obviously communicating that she was not transparent with Michael about aspects of the business.
Another text message from Natalie's phone caught his eye, one with her sister Penny.
For the same reasons I stated on the previous, it's a very similar in context and has the same wording that Michael and I should have been. Details with Michael and I should have been completely transparent with him. That's similar to the previous text.
What happened in September of 2018?
From our investigation, we learned that, and these texts are an example of how we learned that Michael Cochran discovered that there were aspects of the business, particularly related to the purchase or investment into contracts and the amount of money that investors were investing versus what he believed, what he had been told by the defendant. And more importantly, the promised return was much larger to those individuals than he had previously believed. And he was extremely upset by that.
After Michael's death in February 2019, Lieutenant Bledsoe interviewed Natalie 3 different times, in April 2019, and then on back-to-back days in May 2019. The first interview was in person, with Natalie's mother joining her. The last 2 interviews were done over the phone.
During the first interview, did the defendant tell you or give you her recollection of what happened to Michael the morning of February 6th?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
Yes. She said that, as I stated earlier, they were in the residence together, and that Mr. Cochran had suddenly went into the kitchen, and she had heard a noise in there. I think she said it was a thud. She gave the time reference in that interview of 10 a.m. that morning. She went into the kitchen, and Mr. Cochran was in the floor, and that she had discovered a bottle of enclomiphene citrate on the kitchen counter when she went into the kitchen.
And did she also provide a recollection of events of February 6th during your second interview?
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that for us?
Yes. At that time, she said that the morning of February 6th, that when she and Michael returned home, that they had sat together for approximately an hour, and that Michael Cochran was doing the best that he had ever done in his life, and that not long after that, he had went into the kitchen, threw up in the sink, and fell and hit his head on the granite countertop and ended up in the floor.
And did she tell you where in the house they were prior to Michael getting up and getting sick?
I believe they were she told me they were in the living room area. And also in that interview, I recall that she stated that she had recovered the bottle of enclomiphene citrate hidden in a cabinet instead of sitting on the kitchen counter as she had previously stated.
And lastly, what was her recollection of events of the morning of February 6th during your third interview with Mrs. Cochran?
During that interview, she indicated that, again, they had gone separate ways that morning and had returned home, and that upon returning home, Mr. Cochran had been sleeping on the couch for approximately 45 minutes to an hour, and that when he awoke shortly after that, he went into the kitchen and had collapsed. And also she introduced that in that interview that Michael Cochran was allegedly using insulin as part of a bodybuilding regimen, and that he readily kept insulin and needles in the home for the purpose of using that in his bodybuilding. I asked her if she had ever injected Michael as part of that to assist him. She indicated that she had not, that he injected himself. And I asked her if he had a common injection site that he preferred to use. And she listed or recited different areas on the body. But the one that stood out to me was she said that his back, or in the back. And that just seemed odd to me.
He said after Michael passed away, the Cochrans' businesses continued.
And how do you know that?
Through investigation and collection of records and interviewing of witnesses, the business continued, and the defendant continued to try to solicit investors to come into the business. I believe additional investor or two did come into the business.
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. This is post-murder, supposedly. That is irrelevant to this trial.
Your Honor, it's relevant because it proves that Mrs. Cochran was the one that was running the business, not Michael.
Objections overruled.
Lieutenant Bledsoe told the jury that he participated in the search of the Cochrans' home, and afterwards he reviewed the property receipts from the search.
At the conclusion of the search warrant, I asked the defendant to join me in the kitchen area at the table so I could go over the property receipts with her. There were 4 of them, and explain to her what exactly they were and that those were her copies. I believe her mother was present for that as well. And got the document out and for the property receipt for the home that we were in. And when I identified that, the defendant immediately began going through the pages. There's multiple pages to that document. And she stopped and identified an item with her finger and said, this right here, this bottle of insulin, I keep this here at my home for a neighbor's child who's diabetic. And I said, okay, thank you for that information. And we concluded the search warrant and left.
During cross-examination, Natalie's attorney pointed out that Michael Cochran was listed as a partner in both of the fraudulent businesses.
You know that Michael and Natalie were signatories to their bank statements, right?
Yes.
And both of them had the accounts in First Community Bank, right?
I'm not sure exactly which accounts you're referring to, but
let's say First Community Bank business account number 4 last digit 4272, opened on July 1st, 2013. Authorized signers being Michael B. Cochran and Natalie Cochran, whose address is blah blah blah. Well, they were both on the account.
Natalie's attorney then asked him more about the federal government's investigation.
You have no evidence to suggest, sir, that the federal government would not have indicted Mr. Cochran had he not been dead by September 25th of 2019.
No, I don't believe that he would have.
He would not have been indicted. Even though the federal government was looking at all of his property that he enjoyed and had at his disposal and purchased with the proceeds of illegal transactions. You do not believe that he would have been charged with these offenses?
No, but I don't believe that there was evidence to support that.
Lieutenant Bledsoe was also asked about 38-year-old Michael's health.
Wouldn't it be fair to say, Mr. Bledsoe, that Michael wasn't himself the last couple of months between the time he was in a hospital and the time when he actually collapsed in a home?
Yes, I believe that's fair to say. He was definitely exhibiting signs, I think, of stress over not being able to find out where his money was that was supposed to be in the bank.
Sure, I understand that. But he also exhibited some serious illnesses, and he was prescribed some serious medication. And I'd like to ask you whether you know whether he was ever diagnosed with seizures and acute encephalopathy.
I don't recall if he was specifically diagnosed with that or not.
Well, did you read the report of Dr. Ward? I mean, it's in Discovery. Just give it to us. You gave it to us.
I'm sure that Yes, that I reviewed those documents. It's been many years ago, and sitting here right now to recall it off the top of my head.
So if he had an acute condition of seizures, encephalopathy, and was prescribed medication that I probably cannot even pronounce, lamotrigine, serious medication against seizures, anticonvulsant, would that surprise you? He had that condition?
Without actually seeing the documents and being able to know exactly how it's phrased and see the exact verbiage, I can't really say if it would surprise me or not. I know he sought treatment and was treated for various symptoms and possibilities of different medical conditions, but I don't ever remember seeing a clear diagnosis that definitively said this is exactly what's wrong with Michael Cochran.
He was treated to the extent that he refused to take the medication. Did you know that?
I have been told that.
You've been told that? He refused to take what medication, sir?
It was referred to as seizure medication.
That's not good, is it?
I don't know.
Natalie's attorney asked about experimental drugs Michael had been taking.
Did you know that Mr. Cochran was using the so-called smart drugs from nootropics?
I'm not familiar with that term, smart drugs. I don't know what that is.
You gave us the discovery. You did all this investigation. You didn't know that Mr. Cochran was using substances that you didn't even know about?
If it was a discovery, that doesn't necessarily mean that I had knowledge that he was actually using anything.
Did you hear anything about Mr. Cochran using substances that boosted the brain performance?
No, I don't recall hearing that.
Anything about substances that increase the memory of a person who uses them?
No, like I said, the supplement information that I was given was by the defendant after Mr. Cochran was deceased.
Lieutenant Bledsoe was shown the vial of insulin investigators found after executing their search warrant on the home.
Mr. Cochran died in February of 2019. Right?
Yes.
And you find this vial in June. That would be June. Well, I don't remember the exact date. June what?
I believe the search warrant was on June 25th of 2019.
Okay. Well, some 4 months later.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at this exhibit, would you agree with me that this bottle is full?
No.
No? Look at the second picture. Would you agree with me that bottle that's the same bottle, isn't it?
It appears to be, yes.
Yeah. And that bottle is full.
I can't tell anything at all from this picture.
You can't, okay.
As far as the level of contents.
Okay.
Natalie's attorney pointed out that according to Dr. Krieger, the state's own expert, a fair amount of insulin must have been injected into Michael to cause his death.
Would it appear to you that a fair amount of substance from this bottle has been withdrawn?
I can't testify to what Dr. Krieger believes is a fair amount based on a hand signal.
This is not the bottle that was used and its substance been used to allegedly inject Mr. Cochran. You have no evidence of that.
I can't say if it is or it isn't.
He agreed that the bottle was not tested for fingerprints or DNA, and that he has no evidence that it was, in fact, the murder weapon. Soon it was the defense's turn to call witnesses to the stand. Natalie didn't testify in her own defense, but her children did. Nicole Cochran, who was 13 when her dad died, testified that her parents were buying technology and then reselling it with government contracts. She said her dad told her that he was filling out government contracts when she regularly saw him working on his computer. She said she never saw her mom working on those contracts. It was just something her dad did. Nicole was now a junior in college. She remembered her dad as image-obsessed and said he never left the house without looking perfect. She said he took steroids that he bought from Mexico, as well as other supplements. She testified about all of the pills her dad took.
He would lay all of his pills out on the counter, and there would be so many of them that they would just sit in a whole circle, and it looked like the size of a dinner plate. And then he would scoop them handfuls at a time into his mouth and use the sink water to drain them down. And then he would take the steroids as well.
How many pills were there, just roughly?
Probably around 40 a day.
Michael's fascination with fitness helped him win 6th place at a Tough Man competition at the fair. To win that, he literally pulled a Hummer vehicle. But Nicole said she was also worried about her dad's health.
In about 2017, did you start noticing any changes in your father's health?
Yes.
What did you notice?
He was very agitated and angry, more so than not. And he was having a lot of headaches. And he would complain about them frequently. And he wasn't eating as much as he used to.
Did he have back surgery in 2017? Do you remember?
I'm not entirely sure when he had back surgery, but I remember him having it.
Okay. How long did he stay in the hospital for that? Or was it an outpatient?
For the back surgery, I'm not sure.
Okay. Did he like to go to hospitals?
No, he hated them.
What did he tell you about these hospitals?
He considered them to be a waste of his time and that he never wanted to be in one again.
Okay. Was there ever a time that he had to go to the hospital in 2018, if you recall?
Yes.
He went there for one day at the end of October 2018?
I believe so, yes.
Do you know what prompted his going to the place where he apparently hated, such as the hospitals?
The doctors, I believe, thought that he had a brain tumor.
Okay.
I'm not sure what led for him to be there, like the symptoms.
What did he complain about the time when he first went to the hospital in October of 2018?
I believe it was the headaches.
Headaches.
And some dizziness, maybe.
Nicole testified that over the years before his February 2019 death, Michael's health took such a drastic turn for the worse, he actually said goodbye to his children. He didn't think he would live to see them again. He recovered, although he was still suffering. By 2019, he was forgetful. Sometimes he got angry. The headaches had returned and made him uncomfortable. He slept a lot. Others who took the stand also remembered Michael having brain fog, forgetting things or losing things and saying things that didn't make sense.
Was your father a happy man?
No.
When was the happiest that you ever saw him?
When we had money. When he believed he was going to get paid, I would say.
What was Natalie's reaction after Michael passed away?
She was very distraught.
Would it be a fair statement that Natalie loved Michael with all her heart?
Yes.
Nicole's younger brother, who was now 17, testified about the dynamics between his parents. He was only identified by initials MAC in the courtroom because he is a minor. He remembered the happier times when his dad coached him in baseball and football. We just always did stuff together, he testified. He told the jury about snuggling with his parents in their bed when he was a little boy. He remembered his mom watching a movie while his dad was working on government contracts on his computer. He recalled seeing thousands and thousands of dollars in the contracts and asking his dad what they were. He said he even helped him with a $50,000 one once. He was asked if his father was secretive about his business, and he said very. He testified that his father told him that the business had to be a woman-owned business so they could get more contracts. Natalie owned 51% and Michael owned 49%. The son told the jury that we all know who really wore the pants in that situation, though, and Michael definitely ran it way more than his mom. He said his father was, of course, a very dominant figure. He said his dad was controlling and that he would always check Natalie's phone as well as all the phones in the house. He said his father was a jealous man. Natalie's older sister, Penny, also testified about Michael's steroid use and supplements she said he took to get buffer, bigger, and stronger.
How long did you observe Michael Cochran take all these substances?
Years. It'd been years since I've known, since they were together.
Have you ever been able to determine what these substances were?
No, sir. I never asked him. I would just say, please stop. And he'd just, laugh at me.
According to Penny, Michael's health wasn't good. He was dizzy and felt foggy all the time. The family thought it might be from mold when Michael worked under the house. She said she had seen him throw up and land in the hospital in late 2018, a few months before his death. On the day that Michael collapsed at his home in February 2019, Penny went over to the house to help Natalie. She remembered Natalie cleaning up Michael because he had an accident. Penny thought Michael had a seizure. She said by that evening, Natalie was taking Michael to the hospital, even though he was adamantly against it. Penny came over to get her niece and nephew so she could watch them. Like many of the Cochrans' family members and friends, Penny lost $50,000 in the Ponzi scheme, she testified under cross. Natalie was the one Penny gave the money to. Natalie was the money person in the family business, she said. In her closing arguments, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Ashley Accord reminded the jury that Michael's blood glucose was dangerously low.
When Michael arrived at Raleigh General Hospital, his blood glucose was 21. That's a far cry from 145 and 115. Seemingly, it's plummeted out of nowhere. You heard from Dr. Uribe and Dr. Krieger. The only reasonable explanation is exogenous insulin administration. February 7th through 11th of 2019. Michael was transferred to Charleston Area Medical Center, CAMC. His MRI there, as you've heard, showed diffuse hypoglycemic encephalopathy, brain swelling caused by low blood sugar. February 10th of 2019, Michael is transferred to hospice care at his wife's request. He spends 5 hours there before he dies. Here's some of the different stories she told. Michael was sick in the sink and fell. Michael was sick in the sink and lowered himself to the floor. I heard him hit his head, and when I went in there, he had fallen. She also said he was vomiting in the sink, had a seizure, and then hit his head. And that's just a few of the stories we heard. Now, a search warrant of the Cochran residence was executed on June 25th of 2019. And I would note that TSG has continued business up to this point, even getting additional investors after Michael's death, including the Hamiltons. During this time frame, Natalie also pled guilty to the charges that you heard about in federal court, the wire fraud and unlawful monetary transactions. During the execution of that search warrant, a lot of things were found and taken from the Cochran residence. Of note for us was the unopened methylprednisolone vial and the insulin that she kept in her refrigerator. Now, if you remember when Lieutenant Bledsoe testified, he told you that when he reviewed the property receipt from the search warrant with Natalie Cochran, she flipped through it and immediately went to the insulin. And she said, "I keep that for my neighbor's son who has diabetes." Natalie Cochran had the means, knowledge, and opportunity to commit this crime. She dosed Michael Cochran with insulin that he was not prescribed and that he did not need. You may not have done the math, but I have. Next Thursday will make 6 years to the day since she injected Michael Cochran with insulin in his home. 5 days after that will be 6 years since Michael Cochran left this earth. 6 years since 2 children lost their father. Michael has waited long enough for justice.
Natalie's attorney, Matthew Victor, pushed back in his closing arguments.
She was a participant in the Ponzi scheme. But we're not here to judge her yet again on the financial crimes. We are here to judge her on the murder of her husband. And the state cannot prove first-degree murder against her beyond a reasonable doubt. The state cannot prove 3 things. The case cannot prove what, the case cannot prove how, and the state cannot prove why. First question, what was Michael Cochran killed by, or what killed him? And you've heard the evidence over the last 2 weeks that we don't know. The experts that the state brought testified to what they themselves admitted, a definite maybe. Maybe it was the insulin shot, and maybe not. The experts that the state brought testified to, we cannot determine the objective factors, the objective anatomical findings, and tangible demonstrative evidence what killed him. They don't know. The state's expert, Dr. Krieger, said, well, the hypoglycemia due to the insulin administration is a strong possibility, but it's just a possibility. Why don't we know what killed Michael Cochran? Well, because they did not perform the autopsy. And by the time all these experts got the evidence, Michael Cochran's body was so decomposed that it is impossible medically to determine what killed him.
He said the prosecution's theory doesn't make sense.
This cold-blooded killer is planning a murder of her husband with the insulin shot. In that regard, she is calling her friend, Ms. Davis, asking for insulin on the day of the injection of that insulin. I might just as well have asked for a gun. Might just as well have asked for a murder weapon. Jennifer, I'm trying to kill my husband later today. I need the insulin, and I'm trying to kill him with insulin. I need you to bring me some insulin. Is that the action of a planning cold-blooded killer? She would get that insulin ahead of time, not on the day of the murder, and involve 2 witnesses against her right there and then, who came here to court as predicted and testified that, and they gave her the insulin. And then, how on earth did she inject that insulin into Michael?
Well, let's look at these facts. Did she approach Michael from the front when he was facing her in the kitchen? And if she had the insulin injection in her hand, wouldn't he have the time to react and say, what is going on? Let's assume for a moment. Then she approaches him from the back when he's standing in the kitchen, and she jabs him either in his back or his rear end. Well, she has to have a couple of seconds to inject this insulin in him. Basic human reaction would be to turn around and face the assailant, be it his wife or be it some cold-blooded killer, a stranger. She wouldn't have even had time to plunge in insulin into his body without him turning around. And he's an athlete. He's this huge guy. And here's his 5'1" or 5'2" wife who's injecting him with insulin, and he doesn't react. That's why I said it didn't happen in silence. My first reaction would be, what on earth are you doing, woman?
He said then there's the ultimate question of why.
What would be her motive to kill him? Why? She may have been afraid that he would be mad, but to kill him, to eliminate him, from what? From doing what? From going to the federal government? From complaining that my image is so tarnished now in the community that I want to divorce you and you will be penniless and all of that? There's no evidence of that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. What triggered this murder? The state cannot answer that question. But if you had any doubts about Michael being involved in this scheme, and if you believe that he was, then the state's entire case collapses. Because she, Natalie Cochran, would have no reason to kill him. Because he, Michael Cochran, was as involved in this conspiracy as she was.
Neither the defense nor the prosecution would have to wait very long for the trial's outcome. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Their verdict? Natalie Cochran was guilty of murder. When it came time for sentencing, Natalie's friends and family members pleaded with the judge for mercy. One friend described her as a selfless mother and a woman of faith and compassionate love. Natalie even wrote a devotional book behind bars, her sister Penny told the court. But Michael's loved ones also took the stand during the hearing. Donna Bolt, Michael's mom, was angry and brought an 8-page victim impact statement that she wanted to read to the courtroom. In the eyes of her mother-in-law, Natalie was a liar, an evil, narcissistic sociopath, and a thief who would manipulate anyone who stood in her way. Donna no longer had a relationship with her grandchildren.
To this day, this vile being has showed no remorse, none whatsoever. Natalie Cochran and her family have never said they were sorry. We have no choice but to watch in the courtroom with repulsion as she smiles and banters with her family and friends, just like she doesn't have a care in the world. I was shocked to hear the testimony that Natalie's parents only lost $76,000, and her sister Penny only lost about $50,000. She stole $250,000 from us, and she stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from her other victims as well. We, along with our family and friends, have sat quietly and graciously and painfully watched and listened as Michael's good name has been murdered time and time again by those who publicly defend this murderer. Think of the horrific invasion of Michael's in our dignity and privacy. At what point and at what time do we seek sleeping at night? Is Michael Brandon resting in peace? I don't think so. We, as Michael Brandon's mom and stepdad, We respectfully ask this court, in the memory of our beloved and precious son, Michael Brandon Cochran, to delay for as long as judicially allowed the day that this, quote, cold-blooded murderer once again walks among us.
After more than a dozen witnesses testified at the sentencing, the jury ruled that Natalie will serve the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that's all for this episode. This episode was researched and written by Gabrielle Rusin. To join the conversation, you can follow us on Instagram at CourtJunkie. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.